Ethan lived in the kind of apartment people forgot existed. It was stacked somewhere in the middle of a massive integrated city where humans and aliens technically lived together, but not really together. Humans occupied the older buildings, the ones with flickering lights, unreliable climate systems, and hallways that smelled faintly like recycled air and disappointment. The aliens lived higher up, in towers that shimmered with smooth metal surfaces and glowing energy veins that pulsed like living things. Ethan's window faced a gray wall. Not a view. Just a wall. He sat in his chair, staring at a half-eaten bowl of instant noodles that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. His computer screen glowed softly in front of him, filled with lines of outdated translation code he'd been paid to repair. It was boring work. Work nobody else wanted. Work given to humans because humans were considered patient enough to do things nobody important cared about. He leaned back, stretching his arms until his joints cracked. Another quiet night. Another invisible night. He glanced at his phone. No messages. No notifications. Nothing. That wasn't unusual. He'd tried dating before. Human women didn't find him particularly impressive. Alien women didn't find him impressive at all. Humans were still the newest species in the galactic community, and biologically speaking, they ranked somewhere between fragile curiosity and evolutionary afterthought. Alien documentaries didn't help. He'd once watched a popular alien nature program about humans. The narrator had described his entire species with calm scientific authority. Humans compensate for physical weakness with excessive caffeine consumption and emotional denial. He turned it off halfway through. He wasn't weak. He just wasn't remarkable. He finished his noodles, rinsed the bowl, and grabbed his jacket. The apartment felt smaller every night. Sometimes he walked just to remind himself the world was bigger than his room. The hallway lights flickered as he stepped outside. Somewhere down the corridor, an alien neighbor clicked and hissed in its sleep cycle. The sound echoed faintly. Outside, the city was alive. Alien vehicles drifted silently above the streets. Neon symbols in languages he couldn't read glowed across floating advertisements. Strange figures moved along the sidewalks. Tall, elegant beings with smooth skin that shimmered faintly under the lights, armored species with heavy footsteps that vibrated the ground, and smaller, faster creatures that darted between them. Humans walked among them, but they were easy to miss. Ethan kept his hands in his pockets and walked without direction. He passed shops selling alien food that smelled both incredible and terrifying. He passed entertainment lounges where laughter echoed in tones human throats couldn't replicate. He passed a group of alien women standing near a glowing display, their voices soft and musical. None of them noticed him. That was normal. He turned down a quieter street, one lined with public terminals and service kiosks. Most of them were inactive, their screens dark or flickering. One of them, however, glowed brighter than the rest. It stood taller than him, its surface smooth and black like polished glass. Symbols pulsed slowly across it in shifting colors. He slowed, curious. Probably some alien service he didn't have access to. He stepped closer, trying to make sense of the symbols. The moment he did, the surface changed. The light shifted instantly from calm blue to bright white. A thin beam, invisible but unmistakable, passed over his body from head to toe. He froze. The screen flickered rapidly. Symbols appeared faster than before, flashing in urgent patterns. He frowned. Okay. He glanced around. Nobody else seemed to notice. Probably just a malfunction. He shrugged and stepped away. Behind him, the terminal froze. The symbols stopped moving. Then, slowly, new text appeared. Biological scan complete. There was a pause. Then another line. Processing compatibility index. Inside the terminal, systems activated that had not encountered anything like this before. Biometric readings conflicted with expected ranges. Genetic adaptability markers exceeded baseline projections. Structural analysis returned abnormal optimization ratios. The system attempted to classify the result. It failed. Error messages appeared briefly before being overwritten. Compatibility score calculating. The number appeared. 97%. The system froze again. Override protocols activated automatically. Priority status updated. Classification: Prime Genetic Candidate. For the first time since its creation, the GeoMatch network encountered a subject that exceeded nearly every compatibility threshold across nearly every registered alien species. Emergency transmission protocols activated. His profile uploaded instantly. Signals spread outward. Across the city. Across the planet. Across the network. Ethan kept walking, completely unaware. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Probably spam. It buzzed again. And again. And again. He pulled it out, frowning. Notifications filled the screen. Unknown numbers. Unknown symbols. Messages he couldn't read. Dozens of them. More arrived every second. He stopped walking. What? The phone buzzed violently in his hand now. Incoming calls. Message requests. Connection attempts. His confusion deepened. His phone had never been this active in his entire life. He declined the calls. More appeared instantly. He turned the phone off completely. Silence returned. He stared at the dark screen. A strange unease settled in his chest. He walked home faster. By the time he reached his apartment, he'd convinced himself it was just a system glitch. Alien networks malfunction sometimes. Humans weren't always properly filtered. Still, the feeling didn't leave. He stepped inside his apartment and locked the door behind him. The familiar small space greeted him. Safe. Quiet. Normal. He set his phone down on the table. It immediately turned back on by itself. His eyes widened. Notifications flooded the screen again, faster than before. Hundreds now. His heart began to beat faster. Then came the sound. A knock. He froze. Nobody visited him. Ever. The knock came again. Slow. Careful. He approached the door cautiously. Hello? He called. No response. Just silence. He hesitated, then unlocked the door and opened it slightly. She stood there. Tall. Elegant. Her skin shimmered faintly under the hallway light, smooth and flawless. Her eyes were large and luminous, reflecting colors he couldn't name. She held something in her hands, a small bundle of glowing flowers and a thin, transparent tablet. She looked nervous. More nervous than he felt. When her eyes met his, she straightened slightly. Her voice was soft. Careful. Are you? She asked. The human male registered as Ethan? His mind went completely blank. His mind struggled to catch up with reality. He blinked at her, unsure if this was real or some elaborate mistake. Up close, she was even more unreal. Her features were delicate but precise, like every part of her had been designed instead of born. Her eyes studied him carefully, filled with uncertainty, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Yes, he said slowly. I'm Ethan. Her entire posture changed. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. But visibly. Her shoulders relaxed. Her hands tightened slightly around the glowing flowers she carried, as if she had been afraid he wouldn't exist. I am Lyra, she said softly. She extended the flowers toward him. They emitted a faint warmth, like living things responding to his presence. These are for you. He stared at them. For me? She nodded. Yes. He didn't take them immediately. His brain ran through every possible explanation, and none of them made sense. Why? She hesitated. Her fingers tightened slightly around the stems, and for a moment she looked almost embarrassed. Because, she said, choosing her words carefully, you appeared on the GeoMatch network. He frowned. The what? Her expression shifted subtly. Confusion. You have not reviewed your compatibility registration? I don't know what that is. Now she looked genuinely surprised. She glanced down at the thin tablet in her other hand, then back at him. That is unexpected. His phone buzzed loudly behind him, vibrating against the table. They both looked at it. It didn't stop. Buzz. 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 Lyra's eyes widened slightly. You are receiving requests. Requests for what? She hesitated again. For connection. His stomach dropped. That doesn't make any sense. She studied him carefully, as if trying to determine whether he was lying. He wasn't. He could barely get one reply on human dating apps, and now some alien network was apparently malfunctioning in his favor. He picked up the phone. The screen was chaos. Hundreds of messages. Thousands. Names he couldn't pronounce. Images of alien women. Some elegant. Some intimidating. Some massive and armored. Some graceful and luminous. All of them labeled with the same word. Compatible. His hands trembled slightly. This has to be a mistake. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked quietly, May I enter? He hesitated, then stepped aside automatically. She moved into his apartment with careful, measured steps, her eyes taking in everything, the small space, the worn furniture, the simple life. She didn't look disgusted. She looked curious. Fascinated. He closed the door behind her. The phone buzzed again. And again. And again. Lyra looked at the screen. Her expression grew more serious. The requests are increasing. I didn't sign up for anything. The system scans automatically. His heart sank. It scans people without asking? She nodded once. When it encounters an unindexed species or individual. He stared at the phone. That shouldn't matter. Humans are already indexed. She hesitated. Yes, she said slowly. But not like this. He looked up. What does that mean? Before she could answer, something moved outside the window. A faint mechanical hum. They both turned. A small floating drone hovered just beyond the glass. Its single glowing eye pointed directly at him. Another drone appeared beside it. Then another. Within seconds, 5 drones hovered outside his apartment window, scanning. Recording. Observing. His pulse quickened. What are they doing? Lyra's voice was quiet. Watching. For what? She looked at him. For you. A chill ran through his body. The phone buzzed again. This time, a new message appeared at the top. Priority request, acceptance pending. Another appeared instantly. Elite Genetic Union proposal. Another. Royal compatibility summons. His mouth went dry. This isn't real. Lyra watched him carefully. For us, she said gently, compatibility is everything. He laughed weakly. But I'm just me. Her eyes softened slightly. That is not how the system sees you. A loud sound echoed from the hallway. Voices. Multiple voices. Alien voices. His chest tightened. Lyra turned toward the door. They are arriving. His heart skipped. Who? She hesitated. The others. A knock came. Louder than before. Then another. Then multiple knocks. Different rhythms. Different strengths. Different individuals. His entire body went rigid. He hadn't had one visitor in months. Now it sounded like half the building was outside. He looked at Lyra, panic rising in his chest. What do I do? She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed on him, studying his face. You must decide who to answer. I don't want to answer anyone. Another knock. More insistent. A voice from outside spoke in a language he didn't understand. Another voice followed. Then another. More had arrived. Lyra stepped slightly closer to him. Not touching him. But closer. They came quickly, she whispered. His breathing grew shallow. Why? She hesitated. Then answered honestly. Because the network marked you as prime compatible. The words felt unreal. He had spent his entire life feeling average. Invisible. Forgettable. Now strangers from across the galaxy stood outside his door, waiting for him. Not because of anything he'd done, but because of what he was. Another knock came. This one softer. Patient. Different from the others. Lyra didn't look at the door. She looked only at him. Waiting. Not demanding. Not claiming. Just waiting. For his choice. The next morning, the apartment was no longer his. He woke to the faint hum of drones outside the window, and the soft glow of alien light filtering through the blinds. The phone had continued buzzing through the night, though he hadn't dared to touch it. Dozens of unread messages blinked at him, each one more urgent than the last. Notifications from species he didn't recognize, using languages his mind couldn't even parse, piled up in a chaotic wall of urgency. Each one carried the same energy, the same insistence. He must be contacted. He is prime. He is rare. He is wanted. Lyra sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded in her lap. Unlike the others who had been arriving non-stop over the past hours, she moved with deliberate calm, almost human in her patience. She observed him carefully, her eyes tracing his every movement as though trying to reassure him without speaking. Before he could even form a question, a loud mechanical chime sounded outside the door. A group of official-looking aliens, all dressed in ceremonial garb, filed into the apartment without knocking. They carried scanning devices, tablets, and curious expressions. Their leader, tall and imposing with translucent skin that shimmered with subtle patterns, approached Ethan. "You are the human male classified as a prime genetic candidate," the leader said in a voice both commanding and clinical. "Our analysis confirms what the GL-Match network has indicated. Your biological composition is exceptional. The metrics exceed known thresholds across 97% of registered female species." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Exceptional? What do you mean? I'm just me." The alien tilted its head. "It is not a matter of personal perception. Your anatomy, genetic adaptability, and reproductive potential mark you as an unprecedented anomaly. Our species value this. It is rare and highly desirable." He swallowed hard, feeling a wave of panic rise inside him. He had spent his entire life being invisible, overlooked, and suddenly, the galaxy's most important measure of desirability had landed squarely on him. And now everyone seemed to expect him to act as though it were normal. Lyra stepped forward. "They are correct," she said softly. "It is extraordinary. But," she hesitated, glancing at him, "that does not have to define who you are or what you choose." He stared at her, desperate for something familiar in the midst of this chaos. "I feel like I'm just an object to them. Something to be measured, examined, and claimed. Nobody cares who I actually am." Her eyes softened. "I care who you are, Ethan. I don't care about the numbers, the rankings, or the scans. I care about you. Not your biology. You." For the first time, his chest felt tight with something other than panic, something like relief, like recognition. Lyra wasn't just another alien rushing in with expectations. She was here because she had chosen to be. The officials continued their analysis, unconcerned by the emotional moment between the two of them. They ran scans over the apartment, over Ethan, over him again, recording every detail. They discussed statistics in rapid sequences, mapping probabilities of compatibility, evolutionary potential, and societal impact. Their excitement was palpable, almost religious in tone. Ethan felt overwhelmed. He had no experience dealing with being treated as a commodity. Every instinct screamed at him to escape, hide, or resist, but Lyra's presence kept him grounded. Finally, one of the officials stepped back. "We recommend immediate consideration of exclusive bonding. The GL-Match network is alerting all female populations to your status. Delay may result in complications." Complications. The word echoed in his mind. Already, he had a queue of alien women outside the apartment, waiting, some polite, some impatient, some aggressive, all vying for the same thing. And he wasn't ready. He wasn't even sure he wanted any of it. He looked at Lyra. I don't want to be treated like this. I don't want to be a prize or a trophy or whatever you're calling me. I want to be just me. Lyra's gaze held his. And that is why I stayed. When I saw the alert, I could have joined the crowd, the swarm, the competition. But I didn't. I stayed because I wanted to know you. Not the rating, not the profile, not the system. You. Her words struck him harder than anything else. The other aliens didn't understand. They never could. To them, he was a perfect specimen, a rare opportunity, a commodity. But Lyra's presence reminded him of something the system could never measure: human connection, choice, and emotional value. A loud knock echoed at the door. Another female, this one taller and armored, demanded immediate entry. Messages flashed across the phone, urgent and insistent. He felt his panic rising again. Lyra took his hand, surprisingly gentle but firm. You decide, she said. No one else matters unless you allow it. You have the choice, and that is something even the network cannot override. Her words empowered him, but the weight of the galaxy pressing on him was still real. The choice was monumental. Choosing wrong could mean chaos, disappointment, or worse. But staying paralyzed would be worse. He took a deep breath. I need to think, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I can't just be used. Lyra squeezed his hand and smiled softly. Then think. I will wait. No rush. And remember, I'm here because of you, not because of the system. The armored alien outside banged on the door again, frustrated. Other messages continued to pour in, each more urgent than the last. Ethan's world had transformed overnight from mundane invisibility to a spotlight he could never have imagined. Every instinct told him to run, but for the first time, he felt a tether, a lifeline that anchored him amid the chaos. The tether was Lyra. And somehow, that small, quiet fact gave him the courage to face the galaxy's expectations, even as he resolved to reject them if necessary. Because for the first time, he realized he had control over the one thing the network could never dictate: his heart. And his heart, surprisingly, was already leaning toward her. Ethan's apartment had never felt so crowded and yet so empty at the same time. Outside the window, drones hovered in disciplined formation, their lights pulsing in a steady rhythm. The messages on his phone kept coming, thousands more than the night before. Alien women, from species he couldn't even begin to classify, were arriving constantly, some with gifts, some with contracts, some simply demanding audience. The Geomatch network had turned his life into a chaotic spectacle, and the city outside buzzed with news of his presence. He looked at Lyra, standing quietly by the small table, holding one of her faintly glowing flowers as if it were a fragile anchor. Her calmness contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding them. She hadn't joined the swarm. She hadn't competed with the others. She had simply stayed, waiting for him to make the choice that nobody else could dictate. Taking a deep breath, he realized that the choice he faced wasn't about biology, or power, or status. The galaxy wanted to claim him, elevate him, turn him into a prize, but that wasn't what he wanted. The Geomatch network might measure compatibility, but it could never measure what he valued most: connection, choice, and love. I've made my decision, he said finally, his voice stronger than he felt. I'm not choosing them. I'm not letting the galaxy decide for me. Lyra's eyes brightened slightly, a soft smile spreading across her delicate features. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. You don't have to. You never did. He nodded. I choose you. Outside, the first wave of alien visitors paused, as though sensing the declaration. Their drones hovered silently, and messages stopped mid-transmission. The Geomatch system must have updated, but even it seemed unable to comprehend a human rejecting the majority of the galaxy in favor of one choice. One of the armored females outside banged on the door, furious at being ignored. Another sent a holographic message demanding immediate compliance. Yet Ethan remained calm, anchored by Lyra's presence. For the first time, he felt in control of the chaos, instead of being swept along by it. Lyra reached for his hand again, this time fully, intertwining their fingers. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly, almost shyly. He met her gaze. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The room shifted from chaos to quiet, as if the universe itself had paused to acknowledge his choice. Outside, the remaining aliens hesitated. Some seemed offended, some confused, but others, those who had watched silently, nodded in respect. Humans might be a minor species, fragile and underestimated, but they possessed something alien species often overlooked: the ability to choose. To act on their own will. To love freely. Lyra smiled at him, and he noticed the way her skin shimmered faintly under the soft light of the apartment, every movement graceful and alive. Her hands were warm when she touched his, and in that simple contact, he felt a sense of normalcy amidst the absurdity. The galaxy could have everything else. He had chosen his own life, his own love. Days passed, though it felt like minutes. Lyra began to learn the rhythm of human life. She tried cooking, resulting in small explosions and smoke alarms that set Ethan laughing until his sides hurt. She tried sitting in his chair, forgetting that her long legs didn't fit comfortably, and toppled sideways with a soft thud that left them both doubled over in laughter. Their days were filled with awkward domesticity, growing affection, and quiet moments of genuine connection. Meanwhile, the phone continued to buzz relentlessly. Messages poured in from across the galaxy, each one more insistent than the last. But now, Ethan didn't panic. He set it down, and with a calm hand, Lyra pressed a few controls and silenced it. "We don't need it," she said with a wink. "Not anymore." He smiled at her, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with biology. The GeoMatch network had measured his compatibility. The galaxy had measured his rarity. But it was Lyra who had measured him, and that measurement mattered infinitely more. Evenings became their own world. They watched sunsets that neither fully understood, shared stories of Earth and alien planets, and laughed at the absurdity of being two completely different species finding common ground. Lyra's humor was different, more literal at first, but she learned to laugh at his jokes, and he learned to appreciate her unique perspective. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't flawless, but it was theirs. One night, after the buzz of the city had dimmed and the drones outside had returned to their silent patrols, Ethan held Lyra's hands and looked into her luminous eyes. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought anyone would see me for who I really am." She smiled, brushing her thumb across his knuckles. "I saw you before the rest of the galaxy did. I waited. And now you're not invisible anymore, not to me, anyway." He laughed softly, a sound of relief and joy. "Guess the galaxy can keep its contracts, its gifts, its ridiculous messages. I have something better. And I have you," she said simply. The phone buzzed one last time. A new notification flashed, desperate and insistent: elite female request. Ethan looked at it, and then at Lyra. Without a word, she pressed a button, silencing it permanently. He leaned back against the small couch, relaxed for the first time in his life. Outside, the city continued its chaotic rhythm. The galaxy still spun with opportunity, intrigue, and chaos, but inside this small apartment, there was peace. A human and an alien, two beings from worlds apart, had found something the universe couldn't measure: chosen love, laughter, and the joy of being seen. For the first time, Ethan felt truly alive. He wasn't defined by what the GeoMatch network said, or by the expectations of the galaxy, or by his own doubts. He was defined by his choice, and by hers. And in that choice, he had discovered something more extraordinary than compatibility scores, rarities, or prime classifications. He had discovered love. And as Lyra leaned her head gently against his shoulder, the two of them laughed quietly at the absurdity of it all, the buzzing phone now meaningless, the chaos outside reduced to distant background noise. The galaxy might still watch, still speculate, still desire, but for Ethan and Lyra, that didn't matter. They had each other. And in that, the universe suddenly seemed perfectly manageable, perfectly ridiculous, and perfectly theirs.